I'm Craig Snyder, and I'm running to be your next senator from Pennsylvania. I'm running to say no to the QAnon and Confederate right, no to the woke left, and yes to all of us who today whisper to each other out of fear of the screams and slurs from both fringes. I'm going to run a different kind of campaign than the ones you may be used to, ones I think you know are ridiculous, when candidates make a bunch of promises about how if you vote for them, it's going to be like your family won the lottery. My campaign is instead going to be an argument about a big picture vision for our country. What's wrong with it? Very importantly, what's right with it? And what we can do together to make it the best it can possibly be in a wider world that has both very real dangers, but also very great opportunities. I'm running so that you can hear this vision and decide if you want to vote to put it at the center of our country's conversation and on the floor of the United States Senate. Because I believe most of what you're being told about the issues of our time from both extremes is just plain wrong. From the left, it is wrong that wealth in America comes from inheritance and exploitation rather than mainly from enterprise and ingenuity. It's wrong to pretend that college or childcare or healthcare can be free, or that it makes sense for emergency unemployment benefits to last well beyond the emergency and pay a lot more than lots of the jobs that people lost. Resentment doesn't pay for anything. Only taxes, paid now or by future generations, cover the bills. It is simply wrong that sunshine and wind can sufficiently power a flourishing economy, and wrong that climate change requires us to give the government more control of what we eat, of what we drive, and just about everything else. Climate change is real and dangerous, but the prescriptions must not be more harmful than the condition. France and Germany sit side by side, but the French have both much lower carbon emissions and much lower electricity bills than the Germans, because the French have sought to address climate change through the use of nuclear power for electricity, while the Germans have chosen to rely on the unreliable sources of solar and wind, therefore needing to continue to burn lots of dirty coal. Once again, we see an issue where the divide shouldn't be seen as one between the right and the left, and certainly not between people who care about the earth and people who don't, but rather the divide is between common sense and ideological nonsense. It's wrong that American history is fundamentally defined by the moral failures of our past, and that America today is fundamentally defined by racism. It's wrong that we can best protect Black lives by dismantling our police and emptying our jails, and best promote Black achievement by returning to judging people of color by the color of their skins, and by discriminating against Americans who aren't Black. It's wrong to make many of our sons ashamed of their powerful attraction to girls, and wrong that we have to call people who have babies birthing persons rather than mothers, because some few mothers identify as men. Above all else, it's wrong to believe that there is less about this country right here, right now, which deserves defending and preserving than there is about it which requires some sort of radical transformation. But from the far right, it is also terribly wrong to claim that immigrants are more burden or even blight on our land than benefit to it, that all Muslims are properly subjected to suspicion as terrorists, that the rise of reverse racism somehow justifies white nationalism, or that Jews are trying to burn California with space lasers. And it's beyond wrong to keep claiming you won an election you actually lost. This campaign is a warning that our country, our culture, has a kind of autoimmune disease in which our body politic is attacking itself, that the very greatness of the American way of life is undermining itself, and that this very much threatens to reduce the most successful society there's ever been to one weak enough for the world's circling vultures, from the Chinese Communist Party to Vladimir Putin to the Iranian Ayatollahs to the Islamic jihadists, to lay us low, to, as my late father used to put it, give us something real to cry about. George Orwell said, "Some ideas are so stupid that only intellectuals can believe them." Today's elites believe many stupid things, mired in negativity, pessimism, and looking down at much of their fellow Americans. They believe both that the American system is in decline and that morally it should be. They know, or should know, that the number of people who want to come to this country is 1,000 times greater than the number who want to leave. They know, or should know, that for Cubans or Venezuelans who have the blessing to get to America, the sight of the inside of a Walmart or a Home Depot or the first bite of a Big Mac is a cherished and life-changing event. But they still persist with their story of impending doom. The American way of life gave the world Edison, the Wright brothers, Henry Ford, Walt Disney, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, many more, and all the ways in which their creations make our lives better. The world watches our TV and movies and sings our songs. One bold Cadillac commercial said about America's half-century ago trip to the moon, quote, "We went up there, and you know what we got? Bored. We left a car there with the keys in it because we're the only ones going back." End quote. In just the time since America was declared, the blink of an eye in human history, the American experiment has shown the world how to create a civilization that has the potential to give all of humanity's children a quality of life they deserve and the opportunities to make all they can of themselves. We figured out that freedom, economic and political, will create nearly continuous improvements in science and technology and in law and culture as well, and lift us towards a world which was previously only the stuff of dreams. When I was born, there were 3 billion people in the world, and about 80% of them lived in absolute poverty. For that 80% of the world, not much that matters had changed in ordinary life from how people lived at the dawn of history. Life was crazy hard, and it was short. Today, there are more than 7 billion of us, and only 10% still live in absolute poverty. Life expectancy is higher in the whole world today than it was in any country then. If we don't screw it up, the population of the world will keep growing only for the next couple decades. Then, mostly because of more education and options for the world's daughters, it will level off. And then, if we don't screw it up, those living late in this century, including our kids today, will live in a world in which no one will be hungry, no one won't have electricity or the internet. Everyone will have clean water, and healthcare will exist far beyond what anyone has today. Genes will be edited to prevent and defeat disease. Failed organs will be regrown. The once blind will see, and the once paralyzed will walk. New viruses may come, but so too will even faster medical victories. If we don't screw it up, and economic growth in the world continues, even quite modestly on average each year, the world in 2100 will be an astounding 6 times richer than it is now, but with likely less than 40% more people. That's a world in which every human being can live a better life than middle-class Americans do today, and typical Americans then can be living in something like the visions of the future from my youth, the Jetsons and Star Trek. This isn't magical thinking, it's math. Yet, America's current impulses for self-harm and what the political comedian Bill Maher called progressophobia, the fear and denial of good news, has made the miraculousness of our achievements seem meaningless and blinded us to the world's true evils and risks. Yet another commentator put it, when we don't properly tend to the gardens around our villa in the jungle grows back. I want to represent the whispering majority, presently under the thumbs of the loudmouths. These silly people spend their time and energy on small things, ignoring bigger ones. They quarrel over the arrangement of deck chairs while the boat they share may be careening towards an iceberg. It is silly to argue over who has to make cakes for America's gay weddings, while Putin treats gays as enemies of Russia. The Chinese communists herd Muslim men into camps and give their wives to Han Chinese men to rape. And every girl in Afghanistan will most likely soon be banned from going to school. How many of our young people are being taught to have far more emotional attachment to the LGBT pride flag or BLM symbols than they do to the American flag? This campaign is about trying to help all of our young people understand, and I mean deeply understand, that it is the society the American flag represents that has made possible for them to display these other symbols. And that failing to understand this dramatically increases the chances that at some point in their future lives, it could be only the Chinese flag that is the symbol they are allowed to display. Likewise, how many older Americans have been so ensnared in terrible conspiracy theories that they can't unequivocally condemn the January 6th assault on George Washington's greatest legacy, the peaceful transition of power in our democracy? This campaign is about trying to reinforce the strength of that democracy. But at the same time, my campaign is also about helping people look beyond these perils of today and see the incredible promise of our time. See that our time can be the bridge between the adolescence and the adulthood of humanity. The urgent task of our leaders is not to replace America's free minds and free markets, not to fix a system wrongly seen as fundamentally broken, nor is it to crusade for some new definition of justice because our country is wrongly seen as fundamentally unjust. Neither is it to protect any particular ethnic, racial, religious identity, as if America was defined in those old world terms, rather than defined right here in Pennsylvania, in the building behind me, from the beginning, as one people made out of many. No, the fundamental job of our leaders is to conserve the best and most just system that has ever been. It's not to kill the goose that laid the golden egg and that can yield an even richer basket of eggs for all humanity in the decades ahead. The job right now is to prevent America from being broken by tribal delusions, to just not screw it up, so we can lead the world across that bridge to the adulthood of humanity. This country almost decided to sit out World War II, to let the Nazis, the Japanese fascists, and the Soviet communists fight it out for world domination. Thank God we came to our senses and we saved the world. Nearly everything good in the world of the present is because we rose to that occasion. All the enormous progress in the world these last 75 years has blossomed in soil fertilized by the example of American civilization and behind the shield of the power of the United States of America, before we started cannibalizing ourselves. Nearly everything good that we can have for our future, whether humanity makes it across that bridge to adulthood, depends once more on whether we Americans can get our act together. I am running to stand up for these ideas I think matter most in our moment and matter most for our future. So I ask you, please join me. Let's renew America. Let's restore a politics of seriousness, of thinking and of striving, rather than of silliness, shouting, and shaming. In the words of a great American, on September 11th, 2001, now 20 years ago, in the skies above our state of Pennsylvania, let's roll.